Welcome back to the channel. What we're gonna do today is taking a look at this thing here, the Mac Mini M4 2024 model, I think. And I'm sure you've seen them before, but there's already a ton of videos out there upgrading the internal storage of this thing to a larger capacity one, because you can get these things sometimes as a good deal with just the base 256 gigabyte configuration and then stick a non-Apple procured SSD in there and then save a ton of money on essentially getting quadruple the storage, 1 terabyte or even more, 2 terabytes, I think up to 2 terabytes in the non-Pro version of the M4 chip. So why not just do another one of these? So I got a kit here which has the 1 terabyte SSD in it, and it also claims to have a bunch of the tools needed, oops, there we go, to do this upgrade, and I'll show you what specifically I got, and I can also link this in the description below. So again, SSD here, a little screwdriver bit here, which seems to be made out of metal, so somewhat substantial. And then here we have, looks like one of those micro SD card cases with some bits. And this is a T3, S2 T8, and a T5. Then we have some guitar pick things, presumably to hold this open as we are prying our way through, and then a metal prying tool, which is a bit flimsy. It's got what looks to be a sharp edge. Well, I don't want to try my luck. Let's get to it. You'll start by inserting a tool like this, prying tool, carefully throughout the edge of this thingy to try and get it out. I've gotten a few more of these here to make this a little bit easier, but let's give this a go. Now, one thing that it said you can do as well is to try and get in here and lift it up enough to get it up, but that feels a little more destructive, so let's try and do this instead. So get this in here, lift it up, and you want to be careful not to scratch the aluminium, because that is pretty, there we go, okay, pretty fragile. And you want to get it up enough to fit that plastic tool underneath, because then you will use that to continue to pry around the case. Yep, okay, there we go. So now we'll go around here and figure out where those pins are. They're supposed to be 4, I think, at the corners of this thing. This one doesn't feel substantial enough to do whatever is needed next, so I'm going through my Hogwarts pouch here to see if I have any other prying tools that I can use that are a little bit more substantial. So let's see if any of those work better. It's supposed to twist it, but it's pretty flimsy, as you can see, so this is not going to work very well. Now I want to, oops, there we go. Okay, that came loose. See, it just needs something a little bit more sturdy to do, like tiny little twist to get that pin or that tab open. There we go. And you don't want to go in too far, just in case there are cables that need to be carefully removed. You don't want to Up, there we go. Okay, so that looks like we have that whole bottom cover loose. Now there is a cable obviously directly attached here to the power button. So what you can do is to just carefully lift this over at that edge, and then you can either remove it or you can just leave it here flopping about. Maybe put something underneath so it doesn't put any stress on that cable here. And then on to the next step. We have T5 Torx screws, and there's supposed to be 8 of them. So we have 3 up here, 3 here. One is currently covered up by the bottom cover, and then 2 more down here. And what you want to do is make sure that you keep track of these things, where they come from and where they're going, because you'll be dealing with a lot of different types of screws here. Okay, and these seem to be the same length, but I'm still keeping track of their position just in case. To be honest, it does make me a little bit nervous performing this operation, since this is essentially brand new, and if I mess this up, I'm going to be out a substantial amount of money. And here is the last screw. So you're supposed to lift this up, this outer plate. So lift it up and then slide it out. So just slide it forward and wiggle it a little bit on these 2 edges. Fold it over because there is another cable attached to it. There's a kind of flat ribbon cable attached here. Next we have 4 more screws to remove. There's 2 Torx 3 up here, so that would be this bit, and then Torx 5 here and here. Torx 5 we still have on here, so let's remove those first. And if you have shaky hands, this is not an operation for you. Put the T3 bit on and just double checking on the guide. Yes, those 2 screws up here. All right, next we're supposed to take out the fan and carefully flip it over this side, because of course there is a cable connecting it to the rest of this thing. So let me lift this up here and then carefully fold it over. Ooh, there we see the SSD down here. Let me zoom you in real quick. But yeah, there it is. A lot of the documentation suggests that kind of you remove this piece and the cable here and the fan. Removing the fan cable down here requires pulling off some sticky tape from the connector, but you don't really need to. The SSD is pretty accessible, as you can see. So what we're going to do now is pick the T8 bit and just unscrew that one single screw on top of the SSD module that's holding it in, which I'm doing right now. I'm going to use this bamboo wooden stick. There's 2 tiny holes at the top of the SSD, and just pry that forward. Now this is probably why they suggest to remove the fan cable, because you could easily kind of slide into it and slice it out, or slice through it and destroy the whole thing. I'm pretty sure replacing that won't come cheap, but if you're careful and just slowly, carefully wiggle it out this way, you should be able to get out the SSD module from its socket, as I'm doing here. Just lift it up. Oops, and out it comes. So there it is. Now we simply put the new one in and put everything back in reverse. Here is the new one. A little kitty cat on the chip. Don't know if you can see that. We'll slide this in at an angle and then carefully push it back in, and then again use the Torx T8 to reattach that screw. Okay, that is in. Now just reverse the whole process. Carefully flip this over. Again, take care of this ribbon cable here. It seems pretty fragile. Take the T5 for the two bottom screws here. And those are the slightly longer ones. I think this is going to be the first video where I'm not having any leftover screws. I think. We'll see. Now I'm getting the smaller T3 bit again for the upper screws, and those are really tiny, thin ones. And those go in those two positions up here. Now we'll put this piece back in. So this slides in and under, and then we'll put back in the T5 screws. 1, 2, and then 3 up here and 3 up here in this corner. Careful with this thing here. I'm going to wipe off my fingerprints real quick from where I was holding it in place. And then lift this over again and just snap that back in place. So I'm just pressing along the sides until you kind of hear those pins click back into place. Our next step, for which you need the Mac Mini, you need its power cable, you need a USB-C cable, and you need another Mac. We're going to restore the hardware-specific profile on this machine to finish installing the new hardware, otherwise this thing would be useless. So what you need is so-called IPSW file, and this is essentially the firmware for the Mac Mini. Just look through Google search, whatever, to find the right one for this model and download it. It's fairly large. And then on another Mac, use what's called the Apple Configurator tool, which you can get from the App Store. So I've launched that here. Now, what we're gonna do with this thing here first is put it into DFU mode. So we're going to put a USB-C cable into this port here. Note this is off, no power connected. The other end to my Mac laptop, and I'll show you the screen in a moment. So you'll hold it, the power button, for about 10 seconds, and then reconnect power, wait for the orange blinking light up here, and then release the power button, and then it's in DFU mode. So let's do that. 9, 10, power, and we'll wait for, hopefully, okay, it's blinking orange. We'll let the power button go, and then continue on the laptop. Alright, so we do have the latest one downloaded. It's also downloading on a slightly earlier version, just in case the last one doesn't work properly. So I'm just going to drop this into the Apple Configurator app, and then it should upload, reboot, and then we'll get to installing the operating system. There is an alternative way that's described on some websites where you don't use Apple Configurator, but it shows up in the Finder, and when you click on it, you can click on the Restore button and then just point to the firmware file and do it that way. That's another perfectly fine method. We're using the Apple Configurator one right here. We'll just drop that in and then restore to reset factory settings. So we'll do that, and a software update is required for this device. Restoring the requested OS version requires a system software update. Interesting. Let's do stop and let me look up what that means. Turns out I was behind with my macOS updates on this one. The firmware version that I'm trying to restore to the Mac Mini is newer than the version of Tahoe that I had on here. Now, why that is, I have absolutely no idea. Building a dependency for firmware updates or firmware restores on the host machine's version of macOS seems like a somewhat unsound engineering decision, but anyway, I am dropping the latest version, which is this one here, over, restore, and then we'll just wait for this to finish. Now I do have this hooked up to a monitor up here via HDMI. Currently not showing anything, but that should show us the Apple logo once the Mac Mini is rebooting. So I'll just wait for that to finish. Installing system. It's currently 12:57, so we'll be back once this is done. Still progressing. We're seeing the Apple logo with a status progress bar here on the monitor via HDMI, and it's turned from a blinking orange to a solid white light on here. So we'll see how this progresses. Okay, so it's 1:07, about 10 minutes later, and this just chimed. So presumably it's rebooting. I'm not seeing anything on the screen here yet. Oop, it says locked. And we are getting a hello screen. So let me connect a mouse and keyboard and see what's happening. I'm just gonna hook up some generic Mac USB keyboard with the USB A to C adapter and a lovely puck mouse. Okay, that works. Continue, language, English. Setup as new. Come on, create the account. I want to verify that we have, hopefully, a terabyte of storage on here. We do not want to phone home. Now, let's go into system information. Go to storage, and we have indeed a 1 terabyte volume in here. Haha, success. So yeah, I hope this was useful. If you like this kind of content and tutorials, feel free to like and subscribe down there. Otherwise, I will see you hopefully next time. Thank you for watching.